Good evening, people of St. Elizabeth. Father Daniel here. Got two updates for us, and then I want to offer a reflection on what I have learned from the Great British Baking Show. But first, a couple of updates. One's really a reminder. If you have or know of birthdays, anniversaries, or you have prayer requests that you would like to be part of our worship video experience this Sunday, please contact Wanda Slater at parishadmin@st-liz.org. Again, that's Wanda Slater at parishadmin@st-liz.org for all birthday, anniversary, and prayer requests for this Sunday. Second update is, as I mentioned this past Sunday morning, I want to make sure that our pastoral care network is as strong as it can be right now. I have been calling my way through the directory, just checking with folks, and I'm realizing that's taking more time than I would like, and I think we can do a better job of checking in with each other more regularly. So on Monday of this week, I reached out to 14 or 15 different leaders at St. Liz and just gave them 7 to 9 names from the directory and said, call these folks once a week, just check in, see how folks are. And I've asked them to do that at least through the end of April. Now, just because you're not one of the people that I reached out to and said, hey, call these 7 to 9 names, doesn't mean that you can't be checking up on your neighbors and your brothers and sisters in Christ. Sent out an updated directory a couple of weeks ago. That should be in everybody's email inboxes. Check on your friends, call for a chat, FaceTime for a game of charades, whatever. Anyway, but I wanted to make sure that we're taking as good a care of each other as we can during this time of being dispersed. Next update is Holy Week. It starts this Sunday with Palm Sunday, believe it or not. The short version is that this Sunday we will observe Palm Sunday as much as we can. And we are also going to observe Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter morning. We had originally planned to have an Easter vigil this year, but given the circumstances, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to try to make an Easter vigil video for our first one together. I want it to be the real thing and all the way. A couple things you can expect is this Sunday we're going to do, as part of our Palm Sunday service, instead of the full Passion narrative, we're going to do an abbreviated Stations of the Cross. On Maundy Thursday, our Maundy Thursday observance will be fairly simple. It'll be an evening prayer service. So the flow of it will be similar to what we've been doing on Sunday mornings, morning prayer only. It'll be an evening prayer service. Our Good Friday observance will be mostly by the book, with the obvious exception. We won't have a cross that's brought in because we're all in our respective houses. Easter morning will be morning prayer as well, and I have to say I'm grieving the fact that we're not going to get to do Easter together. In particular, that we're not going to get to share communion together. I have been racking my brain on trying to figure out a way that we could somehow celebrate Eucharist on Easter morning. And every idea that I've come up with, and there's been several, some of them a little out there. Every idea I've come up with has felt irresponsible in some way, either irresponsible in regard to safeguarding the health and well-being of our congregation in the midst of a pandemic, or pastorally irresponsible in that some of the different ways that we maybe could have done it have a high probability that we're going to leave somebody out in a profound way. And frankly, other ideas felt irresponsible in regards to safeguarding the dignity and the rituals of the church, to be honest, and turning communion into a kind of magic trick or something that it just isn't, and I'm just not comfortable with that. So on Easter morning, we are not going to celebrate communion. I'm not going to celebrate communion in our apartment. We'll do morning prayer together, and as I said in my newsletter from last week, we're all grieving something right now. We're all mourning a loss of some kind, and I have to say that doing Holy Week this way is a loss that I'm experiencing. I'm grieving the fact that we're just not going to get to do it as richly as we would like, that we're not going to get to do it all together, and that just makes me sad. It just does. Yeah. Having said that, that doesn't mean that we're not going to celebrate Easter as much as possible. One thing that we are going to do, and an invitation I want to extend, is I think it would be terrific is if all the kids in the congregation, if you and parents police this as you see fit, I think it would be great to have videos of kids telling jokes. I think that would be a wonderful thing to have pop up periodically during the week after Easter. So parents, if you're comfortable, I know your kids know a lot of jokes because I've heard some of them. Let your young one take a video telling a knock knock joke or whatever, and email it to me. And we won't use any names or anything, but anything you send, I am going to try to actually get into a video that'll go up online. So that'll be one little way that we'll celebrate Easter together. Finally, I want to reflect a little bit on the Great British Baking Show. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Great British Baking Show, it's one of those gems on Netflix right now. The premise is fairly straightforward. There are a dozen amateur bakers from all across Great Britain, and they try out or whatever. And then a season of the show is these 12 bakers doing different baking challenges. And each week, one of them is star baker, and one of them has to leave the show until there's one baker who, at the end of the season, is the best amateur baker in all of Great Britain. Now, when you watch an episode of the Great British Baking Show, there are 3 challenges that each of the bakers has to complete. It could be anything. It could be they have to make a particular kind of cake or bread, or a fancy meringue, or there's a whole week that's dedicated to cookies, which are charmingly referred to as biscuits in the Great British Baking Show. And as you watch the challenges, in pretty much every challenge, there is a moment when a baker has done everything that there is to do, and they've put the cake or the bread or whatever it is into the oven. Now, as soon as they put the bread or whatever into the oven, they usually start working on something else, maybe an icing or some kind of decoration or whatever. But inevitably, there's at least a few minutes where all the bakers have left to do is wait on the thing in the oven to finish. They just have to wait. Now, this isn't a leisurely kind of waiting where they're relaxed and goofing off. They're usually pacing around. They've got a lot of nervous energy. They're looking for something to occupy their time and their focus and their energy. But there's just nothing there, because the thing that is important is to wait. You just have to wait on the thing in the oven to finish. Now, I will confess that I have identified with these bakers. A lot of us have been cooped up in our houses for a couple of weeks now, and we're just waiting. And we will find activities to focus on for a while. But really, we're all waiting on this pandemic to be over. Maybe for you, you're not cooped up in your house so much as experiencing a severe increase in intensity at your place of work, particularly if you are in the medical profession in some way. Hours are longer. The pressure is higher. The stakes are higher as we try to navigate this pandemic together. Each of us is waiting on the oven timer to go off, for there to be a moment when we get to open the oven, and whether the cake is going to turn out well or not, at least we'll know, and we'll get to take the bread or the cookies or the whatever out of the oven and see what we're dealing with. Is it going to go well? Are you going to be star baker this week? Have you weathered the storm? Or is your chocolate mousse not set and it's runny and things are kind of a disaster? We don't really know what the future holds. We don't know what's going to come out of the oven. But we're waiting on that ding for the timer to go off and for there to be a moment. Part of what I am in my own reflections on this beginning to reconcile is that there's probably not going to be a single moment where there's a timer that goes off and we get to open the oven doors. This is probably going to unfold in stages in one way or another, and it's going to be messier than any of us would like it to be. This has me thinking about two different passages in the Gospels. So the first one is the Gospel that we read this past Sunday of the death of Lazarus and Jesus arriving to raise him from the dead. The theme of waiting is powerful in that passage. Remember that Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, they send word to Jesus, hey, Lazarus is sick, you need to come. And then all they have to do is wait. And if you remember from that passage, they have to wait longer than they wanted to. Lazarus actually dies. And then when Jesus shows up, it's not really clear what's going to happen. Even when Jesus is calling out and saying, take the stone away from the tomb, it's not clear that this is going to be pleasant. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. They don't know what's going to come out of the tomb. The other passage in the Gospels this reminds me of are the Easter passages, the resurrection passages. Now, for those of us in the church nowadays, Easter is a date on the calendar. It's a kind of ding of the oven timer. Lent is over. Holy Week is over. We know it's coming, and we know when it's going to happen. And for us, our Easter celebrations are usually big times of celebration. Like, we know this is going to be good. There's going to be flowers and great music, and there's going to be lots of people, and we're going to go have mimosas afterwards and hunt Easter eggs or whatever it is. I'm reminded right now that for the first people to experience Easter, that's not what it was like at all. It was far more bizarre and discombobulating. Wait on the truck to go by. And discombobulating for them. For Mary Magdalene, for Peter, for the first disciples, the resurrection of Jesus physically leaving the tomb, that did happen at a particular moment, but they didn't know when it was coming. And the resurrection didn't become good news for them until much later. It took several resurrection appearances of Jesus before people began to sort of integrate the fact that Jesus was risen and realize, oh, this is good. This actually isn't scary at all. This is good news. Even though the resurrection of Jesus happened at a particular moment, the reality of it really sinking in and becoming part of the fabric of everybody's living and moving and having their being in the world, that took a lot of time. That took weeks, months, years. When you read the Gospel of John or the Gospel of Luke, for example, there's a lot of bewilderment amongst the disciples with the resurrection. They're not really sure what to make of it. When you compare that to the book of Acts, where everybody is very confident, and Peter and the other disciples, they're sort of like superheroes, there's a gap there. There's a sort of a process of integrating the resurrection and it becoming real for us that took some time. I have a feeling that Easter for us this year, the resurrection for us this year, is going to feel like that. It's going to be messy. It's going to come in fits and starts. It's not going to be a ding moment when we get to open the oven and this glorious celebratory cake comes out. It's a thing that we're going to probably have to work at more than we usually do and more than we would like. And we're going to be surprised and bewildered as Jesus meets us in unexpected places, as he met the disciples on the road to Emmaus in Luke, or as he appeared to the disciples in John's gospel in an upper room where they were all cooped up and afraid. He just sort of appears amongst them. So wherever you are right now, as we continue Lent and enter into Holy Week, whatever anticipation you have of Easter, and whatever Easter morning is actually like for us, know that resurrection, sometimes it takes time. It just does. It can be messy. Sometimes we're in the oven longer than we would like to be, if I push the metaphor too much farther, it's just going to get messier and sillier. I look forward to walking with y'all through Holy Week from Palm Sunday to Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, and into Easter and into Easter season. You continue to be in my prayers, and I trust that Lucy and I continue to be in yours. Love you very much, and see you again on Sunday. God's peace.